Hi, it's Dwyer, gamblersadvisory.com, dwyervip.com. Remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Just a couple of boxing stories, then let's talk about Errol Spence's destruction of Chris Algieri. Right? Felix Sturm fails the A sample for his fight against Felix Sturm. Right? Now, understand that the steroid, according to some reports, that was found in his sample is one of the steroids that was found in Ben Johnson's sample at the 1988 Olympics. Right? This steroid is not the kind of steroid that you just stumble across. Sturm's not being accused of a diuretic, some weight-cutting drug that isn't really supposed to enhance performance. It's supposed to allow you to make weight. No. This is different. Right? This is the kind of steroid that helps your explosiveness, that can make you faster, make your muscles quicker twitching muscles. Right? Now, as it was, I thought Felix Sturm got undressed by Felix Sturm. I'm not alone, right? A prominent cruiserweight came out, Druz came out and pretty much said the same thing, that the scoring was curious in this fight. I thought the champion successfully defended his title. But now we're finding out that Sturm may have been artificially enhanced. This steroid hints at a regimen. Right? You need to keep an eye on that situation. Right? Chudinov, in my opinion, should be given his title back. Right? Felix Sturm, when you see these older guys and suddenly they look rejuvenated in the ring, you need to ask yourself some hard questions. Right? Frank Warren came out a few months ago and said that he thought that PED use was much wider spread in boxing than people wanted to acknowledge. I agree with him. Consider this Exhibit 1. Moving to a different story. Let me applaud openly here Deontay Wilder for taking the fight against Alexander Povetkin. Right? I was one of those who believed that Wilder understood that he can't beat Povetkin, that the odds of him winning that fight decrease even further with the fight being in Povetkin's backyard. I thought we were going to hear some foolishness and chicanery where a champion looking at a loss finds the side door, finds the exit, right? Leaves the building without losing his ring in the title, right? In the ring. Because, of course, it's better to look like you've lost the ring for political reasons than to actually get your ass kicked in a fight, especially when you're an unbeaten fighter who wants to preserve your unbeaten record. Now, clearly, Wilder thinks he's a real champion, not a paper champion. Right? So he's going to take chances, as real champions do, against a real contender, a guy who himself used to be a champion. Wilder calls himself the Bronze Bomber. Understand, Povetkin won the gold medal at the Olympics. Right? So Wilder understands, look, Povetkin is better than advertised. Povetkin doesn't go around advertising himself as the gold bomber. Right? But both of these men implicitly understand that they both had successful amateur careers. Right? The guy who Povetkin lost to, real champion, another Olympic gold medalist, Vladimir Klitschko. Right? Povetkin has been on a run ever since. I'll applaud Wilder for signing the contract. Let's hope the fight actually takes place. Understand, too, sometimes these champions, right, really do have the heart of a lion. Sometimes these guys are in the sport because they truly believe that they are the best and they want to get tested. Now, I happen to think Wilder is wrong about his abilities. I'm taking Povetkin in the fight. Make no mistake about that. but I applaud the champion for being a champion in taking this challenge. Now let's talk about Errol Spence against Chris Algieri. The gamblers were taken care of. The hedge held. Errol Spence got the KO. But this fight did not go the way I thought it did. I think Chris Algieri left a lot here on the table. Right? I thought Algieri would do a lot better. I thought Algieri was a live underdog. Right? Errol Spence, let me be clear here. He has a lot of upside. I consider him to be the crown jewel of Al Haymon's empire. But, he's still learning. If I were to come online here, had I come online here, right before Vladimir Klitschko fought Corey Sanders many years ago, right? Klitschko, huge upside, right? And had I said, look, Klitschko has holes in his game, or Klitschko has untested areas of his game, that if he gets thrown off his fight style, right? If they change the flight plan on the pilot, Klitschko might have problems adjusting. If the bullets start flying back at him, Klitschko might have problems adjusting. A lot of people would have said, you're a hater. Right? Vladimir Klitschko is flawless. Right? Vladimir Klitschko, great athlete, has looked dominant in fights. What's not to like? You're just being mean-spirited. Right? Then, of course, we know Klitschko had some problems, lost to Corey Sanders, right? Would lose to Layman Brewster, had to retool his career, right? Came back, new trainer, right? Emmanuel Stewart, adds a few things, learns or develops further a back foot game, and becomes a better fighter later in his career. Now, here's what I was expecting. I saw Chris Algieri on his front foot against an offensively blessed Amir Khan. Right? I saw Chris Algieri forcing Khan to back up. Right? I personally thought Chris Algieri beat Amir Khan in that fight. I thought he looked great. I thought he forced Khan out of his comfort zone. I thought Khan wasn't able to pick his spots. Right? Khan was backing up a bit in that fight. Didn't have to go looking for Chris Algieri. Chris Algieri went looking for him. It threw Khan off his game. Right? Now here, all I could say about Errol Spence, right, is let's say you're fighting Spence, and he comes in. Right? He's explosive. You notice he has hand speed. You notice he's accurate with his punches. Right? Very accurate with his punches. You notice his punches hurt a bit. Right? He bends at the waist. Southpaw. That's already exotic. Has his head hidden. Bends over. He's not coming in straight lines. He's coming in at angles. In other words, he's not here at 12 o'clock. He's coming in at 10 o'clock. He's coming in at 9 o'clock. He's coming in at 2 o'clock. He's coming in at 3 o'clock. You notice that as you bob, his punches are short. Very short. So as you bob, he'll hit you with a shot, and then before you can back away, he's up on you with another shot. He's leaning into his punches. Right? He's an athlete. It looks good. Right? Sculpted body. Not a lot of wasted movement. Accurate punching. You understand all of this appeals to the judges. But notice how I started that little segment. Spence comes in. Right? Have you seen Spence work when he goes out? Let's talk about another big-time prospect. Big-time part of the future of the sport. Terence Crawford, who deserves mention here. Just understand that when you look at Crawford, right, Crawford has a very developed back foot game. right? This is the same Terence Crawford, by the way, who takes out Ricky Burns up close, right? Is close to Ricky Burns. Can speak the language of inside boxing. But Terence Crawford on his back foot, right? Great jabs, both hands, ambidextrous, can switch. Doesn't have to come inside on you to win rounds. Doesn't have to be in your wheelhouse. Doesn't have to be up close. Isn't relying on his athleticism to beat you. Now, I've seen that in Terence Crawford. Simply put, and I know I'm going to hear I'm a hater, whatever. I haven't seen that in Errol Spence. Now, I know you've read the reports on this fight. I know, if you saw it live, you're thinking, wow, Errol Spence dominated this fight. And he did, right? After the first round, right? Dominates the fight. And how much of this fight did you see Errol Spence, for whom this was a big step up in the level of opposition? And how much of this fight did you see Errol Spence on his back foot? And how much of this fight was Errol Spence not trying to close the distance between himself and his opponent? Right? Could you imagine Ali without a back foot game? Could you imagine Vladimir Klitschko without a back foot game? Isn't a back foot game where the guy's varying things? In other words, one round, okay, he's up on you. Okay, great. He's up on you. He's threatening you, right? He's coming in at angles. He's over here. He's over here. He's over here, right? He's showing you that he's a mid to short range hooker who can throw an occasional straight punch. Okay, great. Looks good. Looks dazzling. Looks convincing. But if you haven't seen the fighter's back foot game, if you haven't seen him back away and give an opponent things to guess about, right? You're the opponent. You don't know if Terence Crawford's going to be in your grill or outside shooting a right jab or outside shooting a left jab or moving around the ring using lateral movement. You don't know, right? You know Errol Spence is going to be hunting you down, don't you? You know Errol Spence is going to be throwing short punches, don't you? I'll give him credit. He cuts off the ring. He changes the angles on his punches, right? I'm not here to say he's not a major talent, just like Vladimir Klitschko was a major talent back before he fought Corey Sanders. Make no mistake, Errol Spence is one of the major talents in the sport of boxing. But here's what I think I know. Boxing is a complicated sport. It's so complicated that one of the most popular refrains in discussing the sport is that styles make fights. Right? Styles make fights. You could be the boss of your style, but it might not be the key that fits the lock of your opponent's style. Your opponent might have a style that you just can't crack. So in my opinion, the great fighters, the fighters who actually are the most dangerous in the sport, are guys like Terence Crawford, guys like James DeGale, guys like Andre Ward, whereas you're watching the guy, and as good as the guy looks on his back foot, you understand that if the guy needed to be on his front foot, the guy could be on his front foot. Right? You understand that, the guy has a plan A, the guy has a plan B, the guy has a plan C, right? In fact, let's call it something different. The guy has a style A. The guy has a style B. The guy has a style C. Now, if in this fight, you see Errol Spence predominantly on his front foot, right? Hunting down Chris Algieri, cutting off the ring, right? Being, dare I say, for a world-class opponent, right? Let's say he's fighting Bernard Hopkins, right? I know Hopkins wasn't at 147, but we'll pretend. Let's say he's fighting a prime Bernard Hopkins, world-class opponent. Or let's say he's fighting a prime Floyd Mayweather, world-class opponent, right? Or a prime Roberto Duran. Okay, I'm rating the Hall of Fame here, but, so it goes. Let's say he's fighting a prime Roberto Duran, world-class opponent, right? Wouldn't Errol Spence be, let's use the word, more predictable than Terence Crawford? Right? Could you imagine Floyd Mayweather going in a fight knowing that his opponent's going to be on his front foot? Knowing that as athletic as his opponent's going to be, his opponent's going to try to walk him down, change angles on him, throw short punches, be up close to him. Right? Now, Errol Spence reminds me a lot of Marvin Hagler. Right? Now, I'm a big fan of Hagler's, but understand that Hagler's fight style played into Ray Leonard being able to literally come out of 3 years, not months, right? 3 years of retirement to beat him, right? Look at the film of that fight. Ray Leonard's using lateral movement. Now keep in mind, Ray doesn't have the best stamina in that fight. He has to take off parts of rounds. But he's using lateral movement to keep Hagler guessing. Then there are moments where Ray Leonard steps on his front foot and starts throwing flurries at Hagler, right? And Hagler, unaccustomed to guys stepping to him, right, allowed Ray to get off flurries. Now, Errol Spence is, and I'll just be blunt here, he's one of the best body punchers in boxing. What I want people to do is to go back to that Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler tape. Look at Marvin Hagler's body work. Marvin Hagler was one of the best body punchers in boxing. But all I'm saying is Marvin Hagler's predictability played into Ray Leonard's victory. Ray Leonard knew Hagler was not suddenly going to, take a step back, dance around the ring, as a Terence Crawford does from time to time, a Vladimir Klitschko does from time to time, a Tyson Fury does from time to time. So look, the first round. About 40 seconds left in the first round. You get a hint of what could have been. Right? Chris Algieri starts fainting. Right? He starts bluffing about coming inside. Right? There's a little space between the fighters, and he starts bluffing like he's going to come inside. Now, Errol Spence, at that moment, looks like a young fighter who's trying to figure out what he'd do if Chris Algieri comes inside on him. Right? You notice in the last, let's say, 40 seconds of the first round, that Errol Spence doesn't quite know how to read the feints. Right? It seems to stop him momentarily in his tracks. Right? All I'm saying is it's a shame Chris Algieri didn't decide to try to crowd Errol Spence out of the pocket. Right? I know it's easier said than done. I know in the ring, Errol Spence is hard to find, right? He bends at the waist. He's an athlete. He's a southpaw. I get all that. But Chris Algieri didn't fight the kind of front foot with volume game that I think would have given Errol Spence problems. Now let me say this. Errol Spence has made some statements after this fight where he was asked about Manny Pacquiao, right? Why was Spence able to stop Chris Algieri when Manny Pacquiao, who knocked Algieri down several times, wasn't able to stop Chris Algieri. And Spence, very forthright, believe it or not, one of boxing's better interviews, right, said that Manny Pacquiao, while he had power and speed, didn't know how to cut off the ring. And that, Errol Spence, that Manny, as Spence put it, lacked fundamentals. Right? Lacked fundamentals. And that he, Errol Spence, really was building his game on fundamentals. Right? Now, you know what? I agree with most of what Errol Spence had to say. But again, understand, styles make fights. Right? Manny Pacquiao. Now, this Manny Pacquiao looked good his last fight. Beat Timothy Bradley. But not quite the same as, let's say, prime Manny Pacquiao. I would take prime Manny Pacquiao over Errol Spence. Because understand, Pacquiao is not going to concede the pocket. He's going to come forward on his front foot. He's also hard to find in the ring. A guy who forces Errol Spence out of the pocket, who comes hunting for Errol Spence, and who has quick hands and a punch, who could hurt Errol Spence, right? That guy would have a live shot on him, right? As Errol Spence matures, he's going to add parts of his game. Just understand, those rooms in the house haven't been built yet. Right? If Errol Spence fights a guy who isn't going to come forward on him, who he could hunt down, a guy who doesn't realize that he doesn't have to throw punches to get up in the pocket. Right? If Errol Spence is not fighting a prime Bernard Hopkins type of fighter, right, then Errol Spence is probably going to win the fight. But if Errol Spence fights a guy who understands that Spence needs to throw short punches, right? He's not David Haye, right, with a lot of ring coverage. No, he's not Deontay Wilder, where Deontay Wilder's practically out the ring, but he could still hit you with that right hand, right? Ditto Vladimir Klitschko. No, with Errol Spence, the punches are short. He needs to be close to you, right? All I'm saying is an opponent who knows that that's his game, right, could find a way to get in the pocket, turn it into a grappling contest, hit him with shots, or could be on the front foot, force Errol to be on his back foot, right, and then from distance get off punches. Manny Pacquiao, I think Manny Pacquiao today gives Errol Spence a good fight. I think prime Manny Pacquiao beats Errol Spence, right? So I'm a big fan of Errol Spence's. I think he's a major talent. As I've said, I think he's the crown jewel of the Heyman Empire, and Heyman has Deontay Wilder, heavyweight champion, unbeaten, right? As well as a host of other fighters, right? Errol Spence has huge upside, just like Vladimir Klitschko had huge upside before he fought Corey Sanders. But if you're watching the fight, and all you're seeing is Errol Spence come forward, right, and throw short punches from great angles and be explosive and catch an opponent up on the ropes, right? If you're not seeing the back foot game that we've seen, let's say, an Andre Ward or a James DeGale unveil in key fights, a Terence Crawford, a Tyson Fury, then you shouldn't put Errol Spence on their level until you do. Right? I've watched Terence Crawford fights where, Crawford decides, hey, I'm going to be on my back foot this round. And you don't even know if he's righty or lefty. He has that much of a back foot game. right? Andre Ward seems bored in fights. He fought Edison Miranda and he was on the outside. Then he decided one round, okay, I'm just going to come inside and blow out this guy. Right? That's what the great fighters do. This upcoming heavyweight fight between Vladimir Klitschko and Tyson Fury, and I consider Fury a cut above Klitschko. Right? First fight, Fury's outside. He's dancing around and stuff like that. I'm just telling you that if these guys end up in a phone booth, you're going to find out that the guy who was outside the first fight has the better inside game. Right? Errol Spence, tell me the fight where he's outside. In the comment section to this video, tell me the fight where he's outside and he's flashing a jab and he looks like Ali on his back foot. Tell me the portion of this dominant performance against Chris Algieri, right, where he's on his back foot and he's shooting a jab and he's reminding you of, let's say, Ali or what have you. Right? I don't expect too many comments that highlight those portions of the fight, if those portions exist. Right? Let's just say Errol Spence is a very promising young fighter. The emphasis is on the word young. Right? We haven't seen all of the facets of his game yet. He's a guy who stepped up in class to fight Chris Algieri. That's where he is now. He's just entering the room of big-time contenders. Right? I'll agree. Like Marvin Hagler, his style will beat a lot of people. Right? I'll agree with that. I think he'd be a tough matchup right now for, let's say, Kell Brook, who vacated the pocket against Carson Jones. Right? Everyone remembers that first fight. Jones, by the way, knew how to push the issue without throwing punches. Right? You know, Jones was able to come forward without throwing punches, without giving short punchers an opportunity to counter him. Right? Jones was able to get deep in the pocket. Right? I'll agree that Errol Spence, style-wise, would give Kell Brook a very hard time. I'll agree with that. I'll agree that Errol Spence today would give a lot of elite fighters a very hard time. All I'm saying is I believe Errol Spence in 3 years is going to be much better than this Errol Spence. And I hope Errol Spence in the gym is working on things like a back foot game, operating from distance, mixing in long punches with the short punches. Understand, Hagler tried to add to his game. Hagler was really an inverted southpaw. There are 2 rounds in the Ray Leonard fight where Marvin Hagler comes in the ring and is actually fighting with his non-dominant hand. Right? He loses both of those rounds. An argument can be made that that cost him the fight. But all I'm saying is Marvin Hagler tried to push the envelope. In my opinion, as successful as Errol Spence's current fight style is, he needs to push the envelope and develop other facets of his game. Because his current construct is going to be predictable to great opponents. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Leave your comments for me here online. Visit us at gamblersadvisory.com, and let me just say congratulations again to Errol Spence. I don't mean to pick on him, but understand here, we're just trying to get an edge on the casino. Right? And all I'm saying is when I see a young guy look good, somebody has to step out of the crowd and say, hey, great front foot performance. Right? I didn't see a lot of back foot here. Back foot's an open question. If he's going to sign to fight a guy like Manny Pacquiao who's going to put you on your back foot, you know, and if the casino is going to throw crazy odds, you know, if the world is thinking Errol Spence is unbeatable, whatever the style of his opponent, right, then I'm going to fall back on, you know, boxing knowledge, that styles make fights. And if the opponent has the right style to put Errol Spence on his back foot and out of his comfort zone, then I'm going to look hard at that opponent. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. Thanks for stopping by.